Thank you so much. Y'all can do better than that. And welcome to all you guys that are on Zoom at the Marsh in San Francisco. Thank you so much for coming. Another wonderful sold out night. Yeah. Sometimes people are hard to get tickets, you guys. This is harder to get tickets than the Taylor Swift show. And I just want to say that too. Okay, then. Thank you so much for coming. Yes, we are going to have a wonderful show at the Monday Night March. Can I tell you guys who's performing tonight, you guys? Oh, we're gonna have The Big Snap by Jeremy Greco. Then the next person will be, and the title is, I am trying to think of some way to make the title shorter because this one is way too long. I think we can all agree. No. And that's by Lee Archer. And then we have The Road Trip Home by Betsy B. Murphy. Let's give them a round of applause because it was My name is Pearl Louise, and I'm your house manager for tonight. So if you guys have any problems or anything like that, just let me know or so. But again, thank you so much for coming on Zoom, you guys. And okay, first we got to do the preliminaries. And number one is to please silence your phones, please. Okay. The next one is emergency. In case there's an emergency, we have some exits. Yes, there's one right here, the exit. And then there's one right there, is the exit. And if it gets too confusing or anything like that, just follow me because I'm getting about it here. Just to let you guys know that. Oh, and do you guys know there is a wonderful talk back of the performers to after the show. So please, you guys stick around, even on Zoom. If you guys want to ask some questions to the performers, they're welcome to answer all your questions. But don't be too prying, you know, but most of your questions, that'll be great. So let's start with our first performer. Are you guys ready for him?
Yes.
His name is Jeremy Greco. And the show description is The Big Snap. On March the 17th, 2020, a lockdown was announced in San Francisco. Jeremy Greco decided to document each day by taking a picture. Isn't that fabulous? From these pictures, Greco conducted a series of interviews of people from all walks of life. Head of the Republican Party, John Dennis, author Nicole Gallen, and many others, all of whom discuss their year of COVID, Trump and their hopes for the future without snapping. So you guys welcome Jeremy to the stage, please. Thank you.
The city mandates come down fast and hard. Shut down your bulk department, spray bleach on everything, and for the love of God, do not use reusable bags. Not only that, I'm the only person some of our customers see for days, me. So every day I walk to the beach and I take my pictures. Snap, snap, snap. Not only as a way to honor each day, but to survive each day, so I don't snap. I post my pictures on my social media accounts. I use the tagline day 1, day 2, day 3. You get the point. People cheer me on and say things like, love the pic, soon this will all be over. Snap, day 50. How do these events affect me and why? Okay, this is good. Let's talk about it, Jeremy. My name is Georgia Hodges, and I'm 54 years old. I'll first talk about the social justice end of things. What Trump's election did for me was, it showed me the real situation in our country. What it did for me was, it motivated me to dig in a little deeper. Then, when George Floyd was murdered, actually, when Ahmaud Arbery was murdered, I was like, what the fuck? Whoa, this is fucked. So I just decided I was going to go down there. I posted a black, on my Instagram. I did the black screen. And my friend Rebel, who I don't know well, who's black, said, I just need to inform you, Georgia, that's just a performance thing. There's a lot more to it than just posting your screen as black, And it was me just starting to learn the language of what social justice is really all about. So I went down there and I carried my sign and I walked the Great Highway. And then I started saying, for the first time ever, like literally saying, Black Lives Matter, and say her name, and say his name, and all these things. And it sounds so cliche for me to say, but I felt pain, their pain. And I realized I have been afraid to speak out. I've been afraid to stand alone. In fact, I met a few other people down there, but they were quieter and holding back. So I just separated myself from them and walked ahead. And I was genuinely angry. And it felt like for the first time ever, I actually stood behind my beliefs truly. And at the end of that protest, I was like, holy shit. People actually organize this shit. Like there's this whole realm in the world of demonstrating that I have been completely oblivious to. And in the past, thought I was above, which is a very white superiority, white privileged attitude. So that was a big thing that happened. Then I started participating in other protests and really trying to figure out, where do I go with this? What does it truly mean to take action? And I think I still have a long way to go to figure that out. Hi, my name's John Dennis. I'm 57 and I'm head of the Republican Party of San Francisco. The election is important because irrespective of your political opinion, the reaction to it, largely from the right, is that people feel the election was unfair. I've talked to people who are like federally elected officials who think, they're not going to say it wasn't fair, but they understand my position and I'm not emotionally tied into that. And so as a result, when a lot of people feel this way, that's what I think drove January 6th. I mean, I think January 6th would have happened whether Trump had spoken on that day or not. And moving forward, if people do not have confidence in the elections, that's a massive problem for this or any country. First, you have to look at historical examples. Okay, you have COVID. That was a wild card, but prior to COVID, the president's economy was successful. It's very difficult to unseat an incumbent unless something unusual happens. And okay, I guess COVID would qualify, but even so, I think people generally felt that things were moving in the right direction. The president was deeply popular amongst his base. He had success in minority communities. He had success in large cities. In the 2020 election, for example, in San Francisco, Trump did 50% better than he did in 2016. And that was largely in minority communities, the tough parts of town, the Tenderloin, the Excelsior, blue collar folk. And again, if I was an objective person, I have not been a Joe Biden fan for a long time just because I thought he was incompetent in his prime. He's clearly being protected by his people because he has his flubs. He didn't run what anyone would describe as a robust campaign. And somehow, despite all of that, Joe Biden won. And another thing that came out of it too is we found out that $1,000 an hour lawyers didn't know whether or not they had standing. So when people say he lost all these cases, referring to Trump, well, Trump didn't lose those cases. Lawyers submitted those cases and found out from judges they had no standing in these cases. These are high-priced, expensive attorneys who should know better, but they don't because the system is so opaque. So we have a problem here on the federal level. And for elections that need to be resolved, irrespective of your political opinion, and you want the country to move forward, people need to feel like their voices are heard. I mean, there are just so many things about that election that make no sense, at least not to me, but you know, it is what it is. You move on. I suppose in many ways, it's actually affected me less than it's affected my fellow Americans because I'm not there. Hi, my name is Nicole Gallen, and I'm 54 years old. And the moment in time that I felt it the most was not in 2020, it was in 2021. It was the insurrection that counts. I don't know if that's the answer you're looking for, but here's my story. I had originally come to Ireland first, then I left abruptly because they had gone on lockdown. I was living in a situation that was not sustainable. I don't want to go on the record in detail because the person I was staying with was very disturbed, and I don't want to give any identifying characteristics. So I have family in Germany, so I went to Germany because I thought it would be joyous to spend the holidays with them. It was not. So I found another place to come back to in Ireland, which is this extraordinary manor house I'm staying in that was turned into a bed and breakfast. But the family that operated it couldn't continue to do so because of COVID. So there's these 4 guest rooms, and they just rented out the 4 rooms at normal Dublin rental prices to the first 4 people that could figure out how to say, I need a room, and I was the 4th one. So I arrive on January 1st, and I have to be in isolation. I cannot leave this room for 2 weeks, which, as you can see, is not really a big deal because it's a big, comfortable room. So I come here, and everyone else have been living together for a while, and I'm stuck upstairs in this room. And I can only go downstairs if I'm wearing a mask. I can only go downstairs just to get myself food. Otherwise, I'm not supposed to leave this room for 2 weeks. That was on January 1st. On January 6th, I hear screaming downstairs. So I put on my mask and I go downstairs to see what's going on. And in the room that the TV is in, the room I'm not supposed to go into, I see, because the owner of the house is 84 years old and I don't want to get him sick, obviously. So I'm standing in the doorway between the kitchen and the room with the TV, the room I'm not supposed to go into. And my eyes are like saucers, like everyone can see that I'm gaping underneath my mask. And finally, they all say, why don't you come in and sit on the couch that's farthest away from everyone? Obviously, you need to. You're an American. You need to see this happening. So I went in and I just spent, I don't know how many hours just staring at the screen. And they bring food to me, and they bring me hot whiskey, and they bring me ice cream, and they keep on talking to me. So it was this weird and unexpected bonding experience that I had with all these Irish people in the house. On a very localized level, there was something very beautiful and amazing about it, but it was also incredibly traumatizing too, because part of my brain was going, what if you have COVID and you're making all these people sick because you feel so upset about your country falling apart and you feel so far away? I mean, I felt generally supported, but I felt supported by people for whom this was an amusing anecdote, if that makes any sense. People who once thanked me and called me a hero now yell at me because they can't get their tofu, toilet paper, or organic rolled oats. I'm called a fascist, because I asked someone to wear their mask. I'm sent a lengthy email by a customer and called a sheep, and I'm told that COVID doesn't really exist, and it's all a plot against America derived by pedophiles. Everyone is snapping, even with my pictures. Yes, even with my pictures. As my picture count keeps going up, my Facebook friend count keeps going down. My friend Greg says, "My God, can you stop counting the days?" Other people chime in, "We love the pictures, we love the days. Don't stop, please." I have a new goal. Instead of 30 days, I'm going to take my pictures for a year straight. Snap. Day 170. The moment I heard Mayor London Breed of San Francisco putting the shelter-in-place order into effect, I was standing in a break room at work, watching on the TV. My name is Tony Cyprian, and I'm 54 years old. And all my coworkers are like, all nonchalant about it, right? I mean, this means nothing to them. But what I heard is she said all that shit really nice and cool like, but what the fuck I heard is your ass is going on lockdown till further notice. That's what I heard. I'm home from prison 9 years, you feel me? 9 years after 26 is just a drop in the bucket. And then you have COVID, and that hits and shuts you down all over again. So it was like the switch cut off for me, bro. I'm gonna call it prison mode. In prison, you go on a lockdown, first thing you do is call your family, your anyone, and let them know. For me, I call my wife. "Hey babe, we're going on lockdown. Probably won't be no visits, no phone calls, no nothing for a while." That's if you get a heads up. And that's what London Breed did. She gave us a heads up. So I immediately went into prison mode. I call my wife and I say, "Hey babe, I'm gonna go to the store. We might need some shit." And she was like, "Well, handle your business." So I go to the store thinking I'm the only motherfucker. Jeremy, I'm thinking I'm the only one going to the store. Why, man, why? Because it's the middle of the fucking weekday, right? And I get to the store and there's a line wrapped around that store like twice. Soon as I saw that line, I immediately went back to prison. In prison, you got 500 men waiting to get in the canteen and only one window to buy your supplies. And that's what the store looked like to me, prison. And they had just given the inmates the keys. The whole beat of life has changed, man. Ain't nobody dancing this shit. I'm not feeling it. I don't think no one's feeling it. We're human. We need contact. We need to embrace. We need to talk. We need to be intimate with folks. But we don't got that now, man. The beat has changed. Do I think kids can change the world? Yes, Daddy. Of course I think kids can change the world. My name is Juliana Greco, and I'm 13 years old. Your generation went from 3 channels on your TV to millions of free streaming services. I think my generation can change even more than that. Okay, George Floyd was traumatic. I mean, a police officer killed him because of the color of his skin, and that was wrong. But then there's the environment, and now that people are getting vaccinated, everyone thinks it's safe to travel again. Carbon emissions are going back up, and that's a bad thing because if we won't stop carbon emissions, we won't be able to live on this planet. And that's even worse than COVID. And it affects me because it helps me realize all the things I need to change. And kids can't make these decisions by themselves because your parents decide everything for you. And it doesn't matter if you try. Trying is just the bare minimum. We could each do more. Wait, I'm almost finished, Daddy. Like getting food to go the other night, you said it was no big deal. No big deal. It is a big deal, Daddy, because when you get food to go, you get all these things you don't need, like napkins and utensils and little ketchup packets. There's plastic surrounding that. There's plastic literally made out of everything. Forget about Trump being president because he was horrible. Forget about wearing masks. I hope in the future we don't need to wear masks. Wait, I'm almost finished, Daddy. I hope in the future that things go back to normal, but it will be different. Like we'll have green roofs and green buildings, like we'll have electric cars and planes and trains. I hope in the future that we fix all this so that my generation and future generations can continue to live on this planet. That's what I hope for. Now you can talk, Daddy. The day Ruth Bader Ginsburg dies, the entire beach is covered in fog so thick you can't even see the ocean. Snap. Christmas Day with my daughters, Fort Point. They wear Santa hats. The Golden Gate Bridge stretches across the bay behind them. Snap. The day Biden is elected president, the sun is high in the air, the ocean is calm, there's a slight breeze. It's a perfect San Francisco day. Snap.
As the wind blows to the east from the west, onto this bed, my tears have their solemn rest.
Let's clap it up for Jeremy.
Made a note of it. Did you write it on your hand? Put a name on it to help you understand.
That was Lee Archer in, you guys ready? I am trying to think of some way to make the title shorter because this one is way too long. I think we all can agree. Let's give Lee another round of applause. Now, I want to take this moment to thank the people. If it wasn't for them, we wouldn't have Monday Night March. Number one, let's give Robert, who works the tech and the lights, a round of applause. And bring the chairs where it's freedom. See the lights? That's magic. There we go. And then for those who are watching us on Zoom, we have Brianna, and she's the Zoom tech. So let's give her a round of applause. That's wonderful. Are you guys ready for our final show? Yeah. The final performance. Okay. This one is called The Road Trip by Betsy B. Murphy. The show description is this: over 100,000 adults in the US died of drug overdose in 2022. One was Betsy's youngest son, Charlie. In the road trip home, Betsy takes the audience on an inner and outer road trip filled with healing and hope. If you could have one more conversation with a loved one who died, what would you say? Why don't we give Betty a round of applause?
I'm finally on the way to pick up his ashes. It's been 3 weeks since he was cremated. I didn't want to leave him alone for this long, but I also didn't want it to be real. Plus, my friend Elizabeth says that we're statistically at risk to get in an accident after the death of a loved one. I get it. I don't remember the drive to the coroner's office, and I don't remember the drive home from the Sacramento hotel where he died. I do remember the morning waking up before I got the call that my son Charlie died. My granddaughters, his children, were coming over to play in a few hours. And it was the start of another perfect summer day. I do remember getting the call and collapsing in shock. I screamed as rage tore through every cell of my body. I do remember holding Harley so close as I whispered in her ear that Charlie died. We held each other as their children, Sonny and Ray, were playing in the garden nearby. I do remember my last hug with Charlie. I'd taken him early birthday shopping, and after we went shopping, instead of just parking the car and saying goodbye in the car, I parked the car and got out of the car and gave him a hug. And when he let go, I said, Charlie, you've got to hug 20 seconds longer, because I had just read that if you hug for at least 20 seconds, it's medicine. So we reached for each other and hugged 20 seconds longer. I wish I'd never let go, but I knew I was going to see him again in a few weeks for his 27th birthday. After that day that we found out that Charlie had died, the weather changed. We had a really weird rainstorm, and the skies got really dark, and then it got hot, really hot. And today it's over 100 degrees, and I have to drive 40 minutes to the funeral home. I've got to pick up the ashes because tomorrow I'm going to Indiana to take some of the ashes to his father. I turned the radio on for the drive. It's Butch on the radio. My ex-husband has a morning radio show. I clicked the radio off. I begged Butch to come to California to visit our son. He needed a hug, not tough love. And now it's too late. I've only lived in California for a couple of years. When Charlie died, I had no idea who to call. If I was in Indiana, where I'm from, I'd know who to call. But to find the funeral home, I just looked through the Yelp reviews and found one. And it's in a strip mall next to a Five Guys restaurant. Charlie would love that. He loves Five Guys. And when he was growing up, every time he'd get into trouble, I'd go pick him up, first from the grade school principal's office, and then from the middle school's counselor's office, and then in high school from detention. One spring break, I had to pick him up from jail in Florida. Later, I had to pick him up from rehab in Tennessee and Utah. And every time I pick him up, he'd come running out to me with this big smile and give me a big hug. And he'd go, "Thanks for picking me up, Mama." And then he'd ask me to go to Five Guys for a cheeseburger, ketchup only, French fries, chocolate shake. I don't like fast food, but I always went. Five Guys was our spot for Charlie to remember that he was so much more than his worst moments, and that he mattered more than those moments. Charlie was the youngest of my 4 children, and on those drives home, he'd always say to me, "It's you and me against the world, Mama. It's you and me against the world." So I get to the funeral home and I park between Five Guys and the funeral home, and I sweat walking inside. It's so hot outside. But immediately inside, I get chills from the air conditioning. And before I see a person, I notice some pale blue packages on the front desk. I look closer at the name attached. It's him. My 6-foot-tall Charlie is now divided into 5 packages. This is all that's left of him. Hey, Betsy, how you doing? Do you need a bag? Do I need a bag? It's Katie from the funeral home. The last time I saw her was 3 weeks ago when I dropped off clothes for Charlie to be cremated in. And she's wearing all black. I mean, she shouldn't be, I mean, she's wearing tie-dye. I mean, she shouldn't be dressed in all black. And this is a funeral home. So I begin, and she asked me, do I need a bag? And I'm like, no, I brought a basket. And so the basket is lined with Charlie's baby blanket. So I start carefully putting the ashes into the basket. And I hear Katie say, do you have any fun plans for the weekend? My son is dead. I don't have any fun plans for the weekend. And please don't tell me he's in a better place now, or this too shall pass, or maybe it's for the best. And my God, how many people have asked me since my son died, when they find out he's dead, they say, how did he die? Don't ask me how he died, ask me how he lived. Ask me what made him happy. I put the rest of the ashes in the basket and I head for the door. And as the door shuts behind me, I hear Katie say, have a nice day. And my body flushes with rage. The ashes are heavy, and I have to use 2 hands to carry him like I did when he was a little boy and a baby in a car seat. And I get to the car and I open the passenger seat door and I put the ashes down. And I notice the pale blue packages remind me of Charlie's blue eyes. On his good days, his eyes were sparkling like a perfect calm ocean. And on his hard days, his eyes shouted with fiery red veins and unhealed trauma. I shut the car door, went around, got in the driver's side, turned on the car, and the passenger seatbelt light starts beeping like there's someone there. So I have to reach over and buckle in Charlie, and I take the baby blanket and cover the ashes, and we start the drive home. Chill out, Mama. Katie was a cutie. I would have hit on her if I was still alive. Mom, Mama, Mama B, I know you can hear me. I'm right next to you. It's so weird, but sometimes it feels like he's still beside me. I am still beside you. I know you can hear me. And sometimes it feels like I can still hear his voice all the time. It's like he knows what I'm thinking and feeling. And should I feel bad that it took me 3 weeks to pick up his ashes? 3 weeks? You took 3 weeks to pick up my ashes? It reminds me of when you and Dad left me at summer camp when I was 7. I don't want to be there that long. Mom, thanks for picking me up today. Although we should have stopped at Five Guys. It's our spot. I look over and the blanket has fallen off his ashes and I smell smoke, cigarette smoke. I feel like I'm going crazy. None of this makes sense. And Charlie quit smoking 3 years ago. Mom, it's okay to smoke here. Smoking's a form of prayer. Tobacco's sacred. Weed is medicine. I always told you that. Charlie, is it you? Mom, it's me. The voices you've been hearing since I died. Me, the signs, me. Although you miss most of them because you're so upset. I send you angel numbers all the time. Charlie, I miss you so much. Please don't leave again. Mom, please stop crying. I can't stay. That's not the plan. That's not the plan. Well, the plan wasn't for you to die alone in a hotel room 2 weeks after your birthday. I still have your presents in the car. Why did you cancel on me? Mom, you canceled on me first. Oh God, oh, I'm sorry. I wish I could take that decision back. You told me we could meet the next day. I wish I could take this decision back. I'm sorry, Mom, it was just a bad few days. A bad few days? We all have a bad few days, but it always gets better. And you always told me you were too smart to do a bad drug. I know it was hard on my mom the way it happened. I know she knew the minute I was gone, even though my body wasn't found for a couple of days. When I was growing up, my mom would always catch me doing shit. Like she had some sixth sense or some tracking device on me. She always caught me. But this time, I made it so she couldn't catch me. I always told her I knew I would die young. We all have a date with death. It's destiny. It was my destiny to die now. It's my mom's destiny to do something with it. When Charlie was a little boy and I'd walk him into school, I'd say, give me your favorite hand, and he'd give me one of his hands, and then I'd say, give me my other favorite hand, and he'd give me his other hand, and I'd hold on both of them tight because he was always running ahead to see what's next. And I wanted to keep him with me a little bit longer, to keep him safe and remind him that he belonged. My parents divorced by the time I was 3. It's like I was born and my family vanished. They both tried to give me homes, but I never knew where I belonged. My mom did her best. She tried to make me feel special. Even on the last day we spent together, she took me early birthday shopping, and then we went to Five Guys, and for the first time, she actually ate something with me there. She hates fast food. I told her it was the best day I'd had in a long time. And then when she dropped me off, she made me hug her for 20 seconds longer. She said that's when a hug becomes medicine. It was a really good hug. I wish I'd never let go. I knew Charlie was hurting. I'm his mother, I'm supposed to protect him. I know he had years and layers of unhealed trauma, and it just got so much worse the last few years, and he was constantly lashing out at us and trying to push people away, and I knew that trauma doesn't like to be touched. And I knew if he could just get it out and get on the other side of the pain, he'd be okay. But it was so hard on me because I was doing a lot of it on my own, and no one wanted to listen to what I was going through, and at the end, I was just so tired. I felt like giving up. But I hope Charlie didn't think I was giving up on him. I was ready to give up. I didn't die from the fentanyl poisoning or from a drug overdose. I didn't die from addiction or a disease or all those labels they tried to give us. I died from a brain that was wired from so much trauma. The only time I felt safe, the only time I felt at peace, was when I did a drug. I died from all the times people I loved chose tough love instead of a hug or picking up the phone call when I called. Everyone was always telling me what was wrong with me. No one ever asked what happened. I was a good kid. I was a good man. I was also dealing with really hard things. Have you ever dealt with hard things alone? Charlie taught me how to listen. He taught me how to listen. He taught me that time doesn't heal, time doesn't heal, connection heals. Tough love doesn't heal, connection heals. We have to be willing to show up and listen to someone's pain. Be that bandage for someone. Just listen. Mama, I just want you to know I'm okay. I'm still around, look for the signs. I don't want signs, I want my son. Your siblings want their brother, your children want their father. Just Charlie, give me a few minutes, I just need a few minutes. I pull into Trader Joe's and I park. I know this sounds weird, but I haven't been to the grocery store in weeks and I just need a few things. And I don't want to leave the ashes in a hot car on a hot day, but I'll be quick. So I turn off the car, I go in Trader Joe's, I get my things and I stand juggling my items, waiting to pick the right line because there's long lines everywhere. And suddenly a young cashier waves me over and opens a line for me. And there's another girl there to assist her. Hey, how's your day going? Could be better. I forgot, Trader Joe's cashiers are very friendly and very chatty. She gives me a big smile as she scans my yogurt, and I give her a fake smile back. Ma'am, you can tell me anything. I'm here to listen. She says that to me like she's begging me to share. Plus, I don't like being called ma'am. You want to know how my day's going? I just picked up my son. He died. I picked up his ashes. They're in the car, and I didn't want to leave him alone in the car because the last time I left him alone, the cashier drops the yogurt and completely disappears, and I'm left there with the other employee. I had to put my dog down yesterday. I'm sorry. What was your dog's name? Lucy. My dog's name was Lucy. Lucy. That's my daughter's name. My son, the Ashes, the one that died, he has a sister named Lucy. That must have been a hard day for you, putting your dog down yesterday and coming into work today. Yeah, it's been a really tough day. I look at her name tag. Her name is Destiny. Just then, the cashier reappears with this big bouquet of flowers and she hands them to me. These are from all of us, and she waves across the entire store and they ring that damn Trader Joe's bell and everybody cheers. Do you need a bag? I take the flowers. No, I don't need a bag. I'll be okay. We finished the rest of the transaction in silence and I walk back out to the car and I put the groceries in the back seat and I get in the front seat and I put the flowers on the ashes. I turn on the car. So, did you like them? Like what? The flowers. Those from you? Yeah, Mama. I know it's been a hard few weeks. I wanted to get you flowers. Thank you. You did all of that? Well, I did everything except the girl named Destiny. I mean, that was just lucky. Thank you, Charlie. You're done with your cigarette? Yeah, I have to go now. Will you be okay? I'll be okay. Mama, give me my favorite hand. Give me my other favorite hand. It's still you and me, Mama. It's still you and me. I cover the flowers with Charlie's baby blanket, put the car in drive, and we finish the road trip home.
Let's give Betsy a round of applause. That was Betsy Murphy, the road trip home. And let me also bring up and say the other names that were here. That was, we had The Big Snack by Jeremy Greco. And we have, I am trying to think of some way to make this title shorter because this one is way too long. I think we all can agree. That was Lee Archer. So let's give all three of them a wonderful round of applause.
Performers, when you're ready to come out, please come to the stage.
Let's give Robert a round of applause. Again, this is the time when we have a discussion that in question and answer, if you'd like to ask the artist any kind of questions at this moment.
I just wanted to make a comment, Jeremy. I had seen your show a month ago or whenever it was. It's really developed. It's very concise and you've got it down and it's great.
Thank you.
Oh, I have a question, Jeremy. I hear you have a book out, right?
Yes.
Oh, tell us about this book.
It's a book of all my pictures throughout the year, and you can get it at jeremygreco.com. So.
Can I ask you, Jeremy, was it hard for you to choose which pictures? Can you tell us a little bit about how many pictures did you put?
Oh, I put all 365 in there.
Oh,
yeah.
all 365.
Yeah.
Oh, great. So was it just that one picture, say a day 200, and you just took that one picture, or did you take different pictures for that day if something inspired you or so?
I took a bunch of pictures, but I just chose one picture for that day.
For that day.
Some days it would just take a second, and then some days it would take a while because I was fussy.
Yeah. Oh, that's good.
Are there any ones that stand out to you?
Like Ruth Bader Ginsburg, like the whole beach was foggy, and I just thought that was kind of a sign. Also the day the Clip House sign came down, I went up and it was near January 1st, I think it was January 2nd. And then I always do a walk on the Golden Gate Bridge once a year on Christmas Day or New Year's Day. And I took pictures there. So things like that are different moments.
Is that family tradition or your tradition?
Family tradition.
Wow.
Yes.
Betsy, I think I got more choked up this time for your performance. So I don't know if you know this, folks, but the performers get two opportunities to do this. And so they were here 2 weeks ago, 2 Mondays ago, to also do this and practice. Really got it. The way the fact that you've chosen a really beautiful way to honor and for your son, I think it was really beautifully done. Just wanted to let you know that. There's no questions. Just wanted to let you know.
Thanks. Most of what Charlie says in that, he actually wrote to me or said to me or through or wrote to me in text or emails before he died. So I think too many times, especially when your child dies of a overdose, like nobody sends you casseroles. and I really wanted Charlie's voice to be it just was like easier for everybody to go, oh, like he's just gone, overdose. And I wanted his voice to tell his story. So yeah, I can't believe I mean, it does feel like medicine for me too, but yeah.
That's what I was gonna ask, if you had ever done anything before, or if this prompted you to sort of do something?
Yeah, I've done, I have previous books that I've done solo shows based on the O Diary, Chasing Temples, and they're both on, clips of them on Monday Night March, maybe the whole show's one of them. Yeah, so I mean, this is very, usually I'm talking about like sex and sexuality, so this is a little different, but yeah.
Betsy, I hear you have a book out. Do you have one?
A book?
Yeah.
I have several books. Yeah, but I'm releasing a book in November, actually about grief. It's called Writing Under the Influence, and it's about grief and afterlife. So it's part memoir and actually part like writing prompts for other people to heal their stories, because I think a lot of people can go to a lot of therapy, but writing your therapy is good, and writing your own story is very healing. But my first book is Autobiography of an Orgasm, so I've got a whole spectrum.
Yeah, they always say that if you can't afford a therapist, journal. Because it at least helps you kind of like work out what the reality is, and you can kind of work through some of the problems.
I can't hear him with the mask.
Oh,
So
speak a little louder,
if you-
sorry.
If you can't go to therapy, journal.
Yeah, exactly, yeah, and I mean, the day after he died, I woke up and I was a writer anyway, I didn't know what to do, and I just started writing, and it just turned into actually 2 books and a show, and it's definitely been very healing.
Pretty cool mom to still take your kid to Five Guys even after they got in trouble at school.
Every time. And he just, I love for him, life was like an adventure. He was very much like the Big Lebowski character. It was like the dude abides. He really lived his truth. He was also in a lot of pain, and so I love that he was able to balance it out with a lot of joy.
Lee, I heard that you had your show in Vancouver, Canada, at the Fringe.
Yes, that's right. I was accepted in the lottery for the Vancouver Fringe Festival that's coming up September 7th through 17th in Vancouver, Canada. And so I'll be performing there, 6 shows. This was a excerpt of a longer show that's about an hour. Tonight's performance is about a third of the overall show that I'll be doing at the Vancouver Fringe. Thanks for asking.
Lee, do you purposely really went into that awkwardness of these shows? Minute and a half of those 2 Barbie dolls kissing, but
Oh, wow.
some of the funniest things I've seen was walk up in person.
Awkwardness?
I misspoke, I apologize.
Yes.
Do a lot of your other screenplays read the same way, or was there something special about this particular one?
I think there's some stuff that I've written that also fits into this kind of mode. And so there's some other things that come out when I put a pen on a piece of paper. But some of it is not good for the stage. So I put those aside, and then I have the okay maybe pile. And so yeah.
Sorry, I would feel like that's really difficult to write down on paper. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you can write something and be like, all right, this is supposed to be dramatic or this is supposed to be funny, but awkward is kind of this weird line that how do you write this is supposed to make things just a little bit more uncomfortable. So how do you figure that out? Can you only do that on stage, or can you also just do that in your house as you're writing?
Oh, yeah.
I used to exercise more regularly by swimming, and I had a rule that if it made me laugh while my head was underwater, So, yeah.
Jeremy, how did your piece kind of help you work through the pandemic? Because I think what you touched on in some of the stories that were all very varied, which was fantastic. But we were all kind of dealing with this, like being away from friends, being away from family, kind of not knowing when the pandemic was gonna end. How did this story kind of help you work through some of it? Was it just busy work, or did you actually have some like, I need to kind of like work through some of this?
Well, the pictures themselves became kind of obsessive, and I work in an all worker owned cooperative. So I never was alone. I was never in my house all day long. My family was. My wife's a teacher, my daughters are going to school. So that was a little bombastic, but I was never separate and I was dealing with the masses all the time. So when I decided to do that, I just thought it was going to be 30 days. And my wife had been telling me about COVID for months. She's a science teacher. She's like, no, this is going to be horrible. And I was just like, you're always saying this. It's not going to be horrible. And it's like her time. And so when it hit, she, and I was at the beach and I was like, this isn't going to be so bad. It's going to slow things down. It's going to be kind of nice. People, we'll get back to it. And I was just like, looked at the ocean that sunset night, and everyone was kind of going to the beach. And I live in the outer Sunset. And I was just decided right then and there, I was going to take a picture for 30 days. And it became obsessive. Like I had to do it. Like I'd be driving when I could drive around with my daughters in the car or something, and I would like see a sunset over the ocean or see a ship, and I would just have to stop. And so my whole day became surrounded by that picture, which was really nice because it kind of took me away from the pandemic. And I would just have that thing that I would do creatively every single day because I couldn't perform and I hate Zoom performances. So I just need to do that. But I pretty much stopped taking pictures after I hit a year.
Were all these people in your life, or what did you do to reach out to kind of interview people, especially with the pandemic?
I was reaching out to people that on all levels. I didn't want just kind of liberal San Francisco people. So I did interview liberal San Francisco people, but I interviewed 14 people and only 8 are in this play. But I reached out to relatives in the South who are more conservative. I reached out to a former salon advice person who lives in Italy, Nicole. So I was just trying to find people. Most people were willing to interview. And my director, Mark Henward, said, hey, you should interview Tony. And I love interviewing Tony, and he had such a fantastic viewpoint. And then I was just like, you know what? I'm going to reach out to the head of the Republican Party of San Francisco. I know that person exists, and I did. And I was very polite in my letter, and I was polite when I don't agree with them politically, but I found that when I listen to people, they're just really wanting to talk about their experience. So I purposely looked for different people, but they were targeted.
That person was actually really fascinating. Do you think you did a pretty good job kind of like telling their story? Because if you did, I was kind of impressed by them, even though politically I probably wouldn't agree with a lot.
I mean, I kind of tamed him down a little bit. You can look at clips. He's this really big, kind of tall guy from New Jersey, and he grew up in like low income areas and came from very tough towns. And he really worked his way up and made himself a success. So he's a pretty interesting guy. He's traveled all over the world. But again, I don't agree with him politically, but he was very nice and generous with his time.
How did you come about interviewing the young kid?
Oh, that's my daughter.
Oh,
And so they just wanted to be, and the first part of my show has my youngest daughter that I performed, and this has my eldest daughter. And of course, I had to have both of them in there, or there would be havoc at home.
I guess a question for all, and if anyone has any questions, feel free to jump in. This is a question for all three of you, but what's the writing process like when you decide? I think I want to share this story with the world. You know, everyone's a little bit different, and there's a lot of like, I don't know, like doubt always, at least when I write, I'm like, oh, this isn't good enough, or I don't know if I can find the right way. So how do you hone in on telling the right story the right way that you want to tell? Let's start actually let's start with you, Betsy.
Yeah, I work with a great two different coaches, and I have a writers group, and I think that's so important as writers, because we spend so much time alone, and you think something's great, and then you read it to someone else, and like, I don't understand that, or I don't, get that. So actually, being in a writers group and having to speak it out loud, where you just, whether it's for spoken word or not, is really important for my process.
It's interesting that you say that. Recently, not originally, but recently, I've started looking at some online kind of writers groups where there's sort of someone leading the group. It's not something I'm subscribed to or a member of, but there's people commenting and talking about their process. I thought that was helpful too.
Well, and recently, I'm actually thinking of starting to swim and test my stuff underwater, so we might collaborate.
For me, it depends what I'm writing. For this in particularly, I tape recorded everyone and had them on Zoom as well, and then I transcribe everything. So I have like 100 pages of transcriptions of all the interviews, and then I kind of whittle away what has stood out for me. And then when I start rehearsing, I develop a monologue which I think sounds good. And then as I rehearse, I edit it down and I edit it down, and whatever sticks in my mind stays and whatever doesn't goes. And I just try and get the rhythm of the person who's speaking.
Wow. Fantastic. I would say that tonight was particularly interesting for me because all three of you had very different pieces. And we don't always get that from Monday Night March, and that's actually why Monday Night March is one of my favorite nights of the week. So I'm not getting a full show, we're getting little snippets of your performances, and there's very raw, I know you're still working on them and you want to present them to people, but they were just as good as some of the performances I see that are full length. So I wanted to say that to all three of you. Yeah. I think we have time for a question. Does anyone in the crowd want to ask a question? No? Okay. So just one final question, and some of you already kind of advertised some of the things that you have going on, folks, but if you can one more time, tell us where to find you if you wanted to follow you on Instagram or Facebook, or if you have an email listing that you do, any shows that you have coming out, any books that you want to advertise, any movies you want to advertise. Let's start with you, Betsy.
So my website is Betsy B. Murphy, and I'm on Instagram, and this means a lot to me to do this this week, because this week is the week that my son died last year. So thank you for being here and witnessing my pain. It's helped me heal.
Great.
I'm my online presence is at a website called leearcherswebsite.com, and there's a link there to a mailing list. You could get on a mailing list, and there's a little trailer about the show, like a video trailer, and then it'll have information about the Vancouver Fringe when that becomes available as well.
And like I said, I'm on jeremygreco.com, and on Instagram, I'm Jeremy Julian Greco, and Facebook, Jeremy Julian Greco. And I'm performing the entirety of this piece at Sea Level Gallery in the Outer Sunset on September 21st and September 22nd. And I'll have a person each night of who I interviewed too after the show.
Are you in a Q&A with them afterwards?
Yeah, I'll kind of do the questions I asked during the year.
All right, well, everyone, please give them a big round of applause. Thank you for those on the field who stuck around. We hope to see you soon in the near future. One night.
Thank you.
Thanks, Robin.
Thank you.
I was really good time. Well,